Thank you. Am I working? Can you all hear me? Okay, good. Thanks for the head nods. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, slightly. My name is Breana Teubner. I am COO of a company called TYB. Stands for Try Your Best, which we all do every day. We are a tech platform that helps brands make community a growth channel. We're a community management platform where brands can directly engage and reward their fans for taking valuable actions. We work with customers like Topicals, June Shine, and Loverboy. And I am honored and thrilled to be here with Stephanie Horton, the global, not just domestic, but global director of Google Shopping. And Stephanie, I think I've gotten to know your background and your experience. She has been at brands and built brands like Shopbop. She was a CMO at Farfetch in London, and more recently now joined Google. I'd love for the audience to hear a little bit about your story and your experience. Amazing. It sounds like we share not having had a cell phone and maybe a Motorola Flip in college.
No, I had the one that you carried on your,
Yeah,
on your shoulder. It was a
legit.
bag. I had that one.
I hear it's coming back in style with the nostalgia and the mental breaks from social media. But jokes aside, when I hear you talk about your amazing career, you have seen firsthand how technology has not only helped brands grow, but has helped brands, at the end of the day, see customers more clearly and ultimately see their preferences. Can you talk a little bit about what you saw over the last 10, 15, 20 years through that journey?
Yeah, I mean, when I started, there was no social media. Data was not a form of marketing. It was used for other things. And I think definitely today, with social media coming into form in 2010, it immediately opened a door for global markets, right? All of a sudden, it wasn't just what we were telling people here in the US, they could see what people were doing around the world. And this also, really was the kind of dawning of e-commerce. And opening your business just beyond the person on the street, but also opening global markets. So I think data then became very important. Understanding your customer wasn't just the people who walked through the door, it were the people who were buying online as well. So I think over the last 10 years, we've seen a real shift in personalization becoming really important. Understanding what your customer wants, really important. Meeting your customer where they are, really important. So it's not just about your store and your Instagram, but what other channels are you marketing to, and how are you communicating with your customer, and are you telling the right story in each of those channels, because they're all very different. So I think marketing has become a lot more a balance of art and science, where I think maybe 10 years ago it was very much art, but these days you really do need to understand the science.
Yeah, I love that. And when you talk about meeting your customers where they are, one of the things that was so insightful to me through the pandemic is, for example, in fashion, pre-pandemic, about 15% of revenue in the fashion industry came from e-com online, and that doubled during e-com. So when you talk about meeting customers where they are, that can seem quite overwhelming when you're building a brand. What are ways that brand builders can understand who their customers are and where they are across both the digital and IRL landscape?
Yeah, I think those are actually two separate things, right? Like, understanding who your customer is understanding who they are, what they like, why they're coming to you. I think that's an important thing. Like, what problem are you solving for them? I think that's all in understanding who your customer is. Where you market to them is now table stakes, right? Like, you can know it's no longer okay not to have some sort of online presence. Like, omnichannel is now table stakes. So I think there's some things that are nice to haves, and there's some things that are necessary for you to do business in 2023. So I think it's not about also picking like, okay, I need to have this huge e-commerce site that does all these things, because we all know that that's really expensive, and then you have to drive traffic there, and then how do you do that? But it's about establishing what your online presence is and how that's going to work and how you're going to transact through that. Like, some people do it through Instagram stores, some people do it through a website, some people do it through other ways, but people need to be able to find you online, because that's discovery, and then they need to also be able to walk into your store, if that's it, or your concession or whatever, and have like a frictionless experience. So I think it's about just understanding where your customer shops, what they like, and then making sure that you're establishing yourselves to meet them where they are.
Yeah, and as that kind of continuum, like you were talking about over the years, comes from the art to science, how is the art being measured using data? How does data help you make better decisions as a brand today in 2023?
Yeah, I think, again, when it goes to understanding your customer, AI and a lot of other technology that's available will give you the stats you need. Even like if you do have a website, you can see, like I was just talking to actually a small business, and they were like, wow, we just learned, they're based in Oakland, and they just learned that 60% of their customers are in New York. Okay, so from the website. So it's like, okay, knowing that information, maybe you should figure out, like, do you do a pop-up in New York? What do you do? How do you leverage that knowledge to actually increase your business? So it's really about knowing, like, where is your customer? Who is your customer? What do they like? Again, and then catering to that to draw in more of that audience. So it's important to, understand the data that's coming in, and also have forms of data. Like, you can't, I always say data is only as good as the people who can interpret it. So it's also making sure that, if you're getting all this data in, that you have the right resources to actually know how to use it.
I love that. And obviously you're a consumer. I know you look great. You have, like, we're both seeing a lot of personalized, assumedly, ads, content, social. As a consumer, whether we're conscious of it or not, we're getting served up experiences that match our preferences every day. How do you think, as consumers, what types of experiences we're looking for that data is able to enable to surprise and delight at the end of the day?
Well, I think it's not even just about data. I think it's about looking at the evolution of the customer, right? We're kind of at an inflection point where my generation, Gen X, we're moving here, and who's coming up is Alpha and Gen Z. So it's really looking at just like, what are the expectations of Alpha and Gen Z? Because you really shouldn't be looking at me, you should be looking at 10 years from now, right? Because you should be building your business for the future, not for today. So if you're building your business for the future and looking at what this generation wants and needs, they've grown up in an only digital universe and world. So they're used to like clicking something and someone saying like, this is what you like. I mean, Netflix, these are the things that we think you like based on what you just looked at. They're served this all the time. So the expectation of the customer go forward is going to be that you're personalizing the experience in some way. So I think it is using the data that you understand with them and the data that you're collecting to be able to serve preferential things or be able to at least give people choices based on what you have. So I think it's just about understanding where the customer is going and what their needs are and making sure that you're prepared to deliver.
I love that. As you know, my experience more recently was building in gaming, and we were a platform that enabled game developers to build loyalty and rewards inside of games. And the thing that really blew my mind learning the gaming industry is that 75% of the revenue is from people buying and exchanging goods inside of games. And for me, that was the new surprise and delight in terms of being able to, one, not only create a fun, engaging kind of social proof of progressing inside of a brand, but also two, to be able to see and hear other customers and community members. And so topicals, for example, one of our customers on TYB has been very mindful about using their brand mission around brand health to build community and support. And one of the things I grew up with building brands was that you could expect maybe 5, 10, maybe 15% of your customers, your MVPs, your most valuable customers, to contribute 85 or 90% of your revenue. As preferences are being able to be more seen through technology like Google, do you think that the world of community grows that base? Meaning, are there going to be more sticky customers available to the brands of the future because they can see their preferences more easily?
I think, I'm going to answer this in another way.
Of course.
I think, brands of the future, I think one of the things that really needs to stick out is authenticity, right? Because customers will come to a brand that's authentic and they believe in. And one of the things that we're really seeing is we have this term called shop values. 70% of customers now say that they only shop brands if they feel like they align with the values and priorities of that business. So I think it's about when you are looking at your business and building it, understanding like what you stand for and what's important to you and being able to market it in a way that people really understand. And then the customers will come, because if it's about sustainability and that's what they're interested in, they'll come. If it's about, clean or, recyclable, they'll come. If it's about Black owned, they'll come. So I think it's really about understanding what your priority and what your mission is and really being able to deliberately market that and be authentic in the way that you do it, be consistent. Like you can't, stand for this one day and be like, oh, this seems to be a trend. Now I'm gonna be over here. That's not, I think we've seen businesses rise and fall because they tried to follow the trend. So I think it's about being authentic, understanding who you are, standing for something. You do need to have a purpose. I think especially with Gen Z and Alpha, social responsibility is really important. I mean, we saw, in December when Balenciaga had that kerfuffle, searches went up 95% for Balenciaga, not in a good way, and that customer still hasn't come back.
Wow.
Right? People are still boycotting Balenciaga. People burn down their stores. So I think it's really important to understand, again, have values, understand who you are, be authentic, and then the customer will come to you. So it's not even really that question. I don't think it's about data. I think it's about authenticity and standing for something.
I love that. And our co-founder and CEO, Ty Haney, who built a company called Outdoor Voices, her playbook, which we enable brands to do now, is this idea of activating locally and then amplifying digitally. And so I love everything you just said, because the question that I now have around that is, how do you take that authenticity, that purpose, that mission, whatever it is, and how do you activate locally, like something like this, where we're all together having these moments, and then amplify that digitally while maintaining the authenticity? How do you see that done well?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few ways. I mean, I think there's, finding things locally that are like-minded. So partnerships are a really good way to amplify values. Like, so if you find something that's like-minded to you, that you see as a way that, okay, if we partner together, we can make this bigger, and then you can amplify it. That's why, I mean, I think what I do and why people hire me is I grow businesses, right? When they start, we're small. When we leave, hopefully we're ready to IPO or something like that. But the way I've been really successful in doing that is a lot of partnerships and, being really deliberate and looking for like-minded brands that might be much bigger, that can give me sometimes a budget and the bandwidth to talk about my platform, but in a bigger way. So I think it's about, again, but you can't do that unless you're really clear on who you are and what you stand for. So I think, again, it's about understanding what you want and what you're trying to go. Look for things or people who might try to or be able to help you amplify and even in some cases add budget to your situation, and then go from there and keep adding.
That's awesome. And I want to open it up to questions after this last question to the audience and see, so keep thinking. But on that, you've worked with some amazing leaders and some amazing visionaries and brand builders. What is the one thing that you've seen them have in common?
I would say all extraordinary vision, and sometimes unrealistic vision, but I think that's what a founder should have, and that's why you have someone like me to tell you, no, but we can do this. But I think, even I'll tell you, Jose Neves, who started Farfetch, when they first approached me about that job, I was living in New York. I had no intention of leaving New York, and I said no. I was like, I don't want to move to London. Not a good time. Jose flew to the States, and within 2 hours, I was packing my bags for London. I mean, his vision and his ability to communicate what he wanted with such passion. I was like, I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm in, because, it was a huge pay cut for me. I'm moving to a new country. I was literally working for equity, so thank goodness it all worked, or, I don't know what I'd be doing right now. So it was all risk. There was, no reward on my side. But for me, just listening to him and what he had to say, I was like, I'm going to take a chance. And I would say that every, from Alex Wang to, people I work with at Google to the founder, I still know the founder of Shopbop, they all could just talk with extraordinary passion and vision about what they wanted and what they wanted to do, to the point that you wanted to follow them. And I think as a founder, you have to have that, because you're going to get lots of no's. When I worked at Farfetch, we raised $456 million, so I was there, but there were some times where we were like, wonder how we're gonna make payroll. This literally we're running out of money, So, and it was like, is this someone gonna call us back on this term sheet, or are we gonna all be packing our bags and literally going home? So without that passion, it's hard to maintain. It's a hard road, and all of a sudden you're responsible for these people. You've taken them out of their sometimes really good jobs, and they've taken a chance, and you feel responsible for them. Even I started recruiting people that I had worked with, and I'm like, oh my God, they just left their job, and now we might close tomorrow. This is really bad. So you start kind of getting on that train. So yeah, I would definitely say vision and passion. All of them had this in common.
I love that. I heard the one word over and over in my mind was tenacity.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
What questions?
Hi, I was wondering, Stephanie, if you were to advise Balenciaga how they can...
Sorry, can I give you a mic? There we go.
Hi, Stephanie. Since you mentioned Balenciaga, who would you tell them to collaborate with to help get them back in the public good books, or would you go more of a donation route? I'm just interested in how you
don't know. Her question was, who would I tell Balenciaga to collaborate with to get back in good graces? I don't know if it's a collaboration at this point, because I think where they went wrong was, this is another thing. If you do something wrong, you need to be genuine in your response. And I think they tried to blame, they blame the agency, they blame the, in that case, it's just like, we made a mistake. This wasn't good, we're trying our best, and hope for the best. But when you've already kind of like, it just didn't come off right. So at this point, I think it's just time for them. I don't think, because now that's disingenuous, right? If I like partner with someone and say make donations to like childhood, that just seems wrong. So I think at this point, it's just going to be time and a lesson learned that when you make mistakes, you have to own them. And I think that's one of if there's anything I've learned in all the years that I've been doing this, is that owning your mistakes gives you a lot more respect than dodging them. And sometimes it's really hard. Like, I've had to fall on the sword a lot of times and be like, maybe I'm getting, let me just pack my little box up, because I'm sure this is I'm sure I'm walking out the door. But actually it worked, because people were like, wow, I'm like, I have no excuse. This was on me. I think sometimes you have to do that.
Hi, thank you. My name is Sage. I'm sales marketing coordinator for Horton Foods. We're a fermented foods company. Clearly, you have such an incredible, long-standing career, and I'm curious, these past couple of years are kind of like a time warp with all these different changes. What has been the biggest change or shift in consumers and building community that you've seen these past couple of years?
I think the biggest shift in consumers is probably expectations. I think, maybe even 2 years ago before the pandemic, I think, not that consumers didn't have high expectations for their, wherever they're shopping, but I think they kind of are, I think we all were like, okay, this is what we get. I think now people expect a certain level of service. They expect a frictionless experience. They expect to find, if they're in a store, they expect to go home and be able to buy it as well. And because we've created, it's good, there's so many brands, the problem with that is there's not much loyalty. So like, if you're not giving me what I expect, I'm moving on to the next one. So I think, customer expectations have been increased 10x. And I think a lot of it is, people are testing now Palm checkout, so, now if it's hard for me to check out at your store and I'm standing in line for 10 minutes, like, this is not for me. So I think it's just about really understanding, and that's not for everyone, like, we don't all need to, be doing that, but I think it's just understanding for your business, like, really knowing what your customer expectation is. I think this is time more than ever to be sending out those surveys and polling your customers and understanding their pain points, because if you're not addressing them, someone else will.
Yeah, I remember, I think, 10 years ago, you could pick a category like shaving and surprise and delight by delivering a subscription box and making a cool viral video, and Dollar Shave Club is born. And that was a surprise and delight to the consumer. It was so cool to have something show up and watch a cool video and share it with your friends, and you had inside knowledge of a new brand on the market. And now that space is incredibly noisy with CAC rising, and customers are hard to acquire and stick with you. And so that ability, I think the future of brand building, when I reflect on your question, for us at least, one is this idea of co-creation, and people at the heart want to see themselves reflected in the product and the customers of the brands that they're working with, and they want to be seen and acknowledged for it, whether that's through status or rewards. And a lot of the traditional loyalty programs are based on transactions versus sort of seeing a whole person for that. So I think it's exciting in terms of the next 10 years, and you all get to be a part of what the next D2C is, which we need to fix that, right? Like, D2C
I think D2C is kind of dead, right? I think we've all agreed now that you probably need some sort of other presence. I mean, I'm a digital person, but I think we've all, kind of agreed that we're in kind of like the new D2C model.
Yeah, I think it's so funny that the acronym has co-opted this model that's always been present.
Yeah.
Whether you're selling in a store or
Yeah.
online or through social media or TikTok, you're direct to consumer. So we need to take a poll from the audience about what the next phrase of
I
brand
think there
building
actually is one. I'm trying to remember it. I'm going to think of it before. I think it's already.
I love it.
Yeah.
We call it community integrated commerce, so I kind of want to make fetch a thing, if you know my reference, but CIC, so I'm curious to hear what you say. More questions?
Sorry, okay, awesome. If you can introduce yourself and speak into the mic.
Hi everyone, my name is Michelle Alazan. I'm the founder of Catapult. We provide working capital loans to CPG clients trying to get into retailers. So my question is around artificial intelligence and how that's changing the landscape. And you both can maybe speak to how you see kind of e-commerce shifting or what you see coming up in the current trends.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's all about AI, right? I mean, I think that's the future. The technology's here, and, understanding how to use it is important. We at Google, we just introduced a few new products around AI. One's called Search Generative Experience, which, for me, I think how it helps people the most is that it kind of cuts down on the research and all the querying that you have to do and really gives you a faster way and a more effective way to find what you want. And I think that's, kind of the definition of AI, right? It's efficient, it cuts down on time, it helps you, it anticipates your needs and helps you get there faster. So for example, if you're searching red bike, it'll ask you, do you need this bike for terrain or city? Are you trying to go far or, close? Are you looking for electronic? It'll, give you all the questions. So instead of getting like 20 search results, you get the 3 that actually match exactly what you need. And I think in a kind of nutshell, I think that's what AI will do across industries, is really help you be more efficient, more effective, and give you like a lot more guidance into what you do. I think the caution is that should AI be used in every aspect of your business? No. I think you have to understand your business and where it really helps you. Someone gave me an example. They were going to, their son was interviewing at a consulting firm, and they were interviewed by a robot. And the robot's like following their eye movement. Obviously it's a psychological interview, and the robot's, but maybe that's not the best use of AI, because this person came back with like, this company's impersonal, I'm not gonna like it. So I think, again, it's about knowing your business and about where AI can really enhance what you're doing and using the technology from there. But I do think it's important to understand that the AI train has left the station. The technology is out there. The velocity of how it's developed is fast. It took the internet, 30 years. What you see now will be vastly different in a year. I mean, I think, we're looking at Web3 and how last year it was all about NFTs, and now we're like, oh, that's not it, it's now this. I think you'll see that twice as fast with AI, and like what was been like ChatGPT, and we introduced BART, like these models will be so different a year from now. So I think it's just understanding that and understanding the technology and how you can use it.
I like that. I think that's the benefit of our flip phone origin, is that I, like you, have lived through lovely fashion trends that I have photos of and lovely technology trends that, come and go. But I love the way that you described it, not so much as a panacea, but as a way to do better, which is the core of brand building, is see your customers and deliver a product for them. I think for me, the short answer is I think all of us can open our minds more about redefining what an ad algorithm is, right? We have traditionally thought about lower funnel performance marketing and upper funnel more creative brand building. I remember when I was at Banana Republic, we spent $1 million on don't tell anybody, $1 million on a brand equity study, literally like asking people if they would tell their friends about the brand or what social sentiment was across the web. And I think this idea of breaking open that algorithm to think about like, not just which websites did you visit today and where did you book a trip to, but Did you give R&D feedback to a brand? Did you attend an event? Did you go into the store? And so knowing you more as a whole person, which we sometimes get fear about, but that's a lovely opportunity as a consumer to be better served.
Yeah, and I think you have to remember too that AI is not new. I mean, it's been around for 10 years, and you've been you've been using AI for data and enhancements. Like, when you make a call to Delta Airlines and the person who picks up is the machine to get you through the first, that's all AI. What's new now is Gen AI, which is more of a LLM, so a large language model. So that kind of is the thing that will enhance and help things, move along. Like, I know lots of fashion companies are already using it to write their captions, to, write their web copy, to help enhance, a lot of that. So I think it'll just, again, give you the tools to, especially if you're a small business and can't afford 10 writers and 12 creatives, I think it'll give you the tools to really compete on a level that some of the majors do.
That is brilliant, and we have time for one more question. I think what you were talking about, the reality of venture cap, and from the audience, the venture capital component, it's always helpful to drop an AI in, but I think as an investor in the past as well, you need to understand the meat behind what you're saying and why you're using it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. One more question. And by the way, when I'm a recovering management consultant, and when you talked about that interview story, that wasn't far off from how the interviews actually felt.
Yeah.
Hi, thank you so much for speaking. My name is Prachi. It's like a combination of product and vision.
Prachi?
Prachi, yeah.
I love it. That's good branding. You're a brander. I like
I'm a
it.
founder.
Cool.
I'm a founder. I'm building Philos. We are building a data analytical tool for sustainable e-commerce brands to test green labels. To test green labels and give insight around what type of green labels their customers care about. Going back to the topic around sustainability, have you noticed any trends where Gen Z or Gen Alpha are requesting more ESG-related data from different sustainable brands?
Yeah, so I sit on the board of Farfetch and I actually chair the ESG committee, so this is a very timely question. I think this is the thing about Gen Z and Alpha with sustainability. They talk about it a lot, but they don't put the dollars, because to be sustainable is really expensive, right? So it raises the price of things, it just, and so I think it's important to them because, as we know, they're very, they're very socially responsible. So I think every time we feel them, sustainability is at the top of their list. But then when we test it against purchase, because sustainable products are probably 10 to 20% more expensive, we're not seeing the return. So I actually think it's important to be sustainable and have the right things for Gen Z and Alpha, but your customer is probably not that. The people who are actually paying the dollars to pay sustainability off are the people who can afford it. So I think it's a little bit of a balance when you look at Gen Z and Alpha on how they consume sustainability versus their belief.
I love that.
If that makes sense.
Love that. I'm an investor in a fund called Alante Capital. We should talk. They invest in tech, making the fashion industry more sustainable. So similarly to Stephanie, think about this a lot. And I love the way that you talked about that 20% margin. The way I would answer your question is you need to constitute that 20% margin pass through to the consumer at some point. I think a way that can be done elegantly, or I've seen it in the past, is if I can express my identity publicly, IRL or digitally, as being somebody who aligns with those values. And so you're gonna have to prove or constitute that 20% premium. It's the same reason why I go in and buy not a Prachi but a Gucci. It's not because the bag is less expensive, it's because I want people to see that I purchased a Gucci bag. So you need to present the data and the way to express identity to constitute that.
And I think you have to also be careful, right? Because just the legislation coming out of Europe and then passing now to the States is it's actually quite harsh. Like, I think, we just had a meeting last month on ESG, and I think quite a lot of companies are going to have to roll back sustainability claims based on the legislations that's coming forth with what you have to do and what's going to be required to be sustainable. So I think it's also really understanding the laws, the legislation, everything that's coming out, and the claims, so that you're not ahead of yourself. Also, making claims that aren't going to stand up in the next 2 to 5 years.
Thank you. With that, Stephanie, it's been such a pleasure.
Oh,
How
thank you
should
for having-
people reach out to you or follow you or get in
LinkedIn.
contact?
I'm on LinkedIn, and I answer, I do this, and my assistant's like, why? But I answer every single person who reaches out to me, and I take a lot of meetings, so LinkedIn is great.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge today.
Oh, thanks for having me.